Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling a topic that's both fascinating and complex.
Yeah.
It's the concept of sannyasa in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition.
Right.
And, you might be thinking, sannyasa, what's that?
Right.
But stick with us because it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
When we look at it through the lens of the Science of Identity Foundation, or SIF.
You see, sannyasa is a pretty big deal in this tradition.
Okay.
It's a life dedicated to spiritual liberation, complete renunciation of worldly attachments.
Really?
Think of it like hitting the reset button on your life.
Wow.
No possessions, no marriage, just intense spiritual study and service to Krishna.
That's quite a commitment.
Yeah.
It's definitely a world away from what most of us are used to.
Right.
And that's what makes this deep dive so intriguing.
Uh-huh.
We're going to be exploring how SIF's policies around sannyasa shifted after its leader, Chris Butler, made the controversial decision to leave this renounced order.
It's a decision that sent ripples through the community. Yeah. And to understand why it was such a big deal, we need to delve into some source material. Okay. Things like letters from former members, court documents, articles, and even some online forum posts.
Wow, so we've got a lot to work with.
We do.
These sources paint a really vivid picture of the events that unfolded and the impact they had on SIF and its followers.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Okay.
First things first. What exactly does sannyasa entail in the Gaudiya tradition?
So imagine this. You shave your head.
Okay.
You don saffron robes.
Right.
And you dedicate your entire life to Krishna.
Oh.
That's the essence of sannyasa.
Okay.
It's a path of deep renunciation where you detach from worldly possessions and pleasures to focus solely on spiritual growth and service.
So it sounds incredibly intense.
Yeah.
Almost like taking monastic vows.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's not something to be taken lightly.
Right.
In the Gaudiya tradition, sannyasas are held in high regard as spiritual guides and teachers. Their commitment to a life of austerity and devotion is seen as a powerful example for others to follow.
So how does Chris Butler fit into all of this?
Well,
our sources tell us he joined ISKCON, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, back in 1970.
Yes, and his entry was quite remarkable.
Oh, really?
He didn't just quietly join the fold.
Okay.
He came with a significant donation, property in Hawaii.
Wow.
And a following of about 50 to 100 people, making it the largest group to join ISKCON at that time.
So he definitely made a splash from the get-go.
He certainly did.
And within a year, he was initiated into sannyasa, taking on the name Siddhasvarupa.
That's right.
But here's where things get a little curious.
Okay.
Just 6 months before taking these vows of renunciation, Butler had produced a document called Sai Speaks to promote his own pre-existing group, the Krishna Yoga community, which had ties to the Sivananda ashram.
Is a fascinating detail that raises some questions.
What do you mean?
Well, you see, the Sivananda lineage, while also rooted in Hinduism, has distinct practices and beliefs compared to the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition.
Okay.
So Butler's involvement with this group, so close to his initiation into sannyasa, makes you wonder about the depth of his commitment to the Gaudiya path at that time.
It does make you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Was he fully embracing the Gaudiya tradition, or was there some blending of different influences happening? It's definitely something for us to ponder as we move forward.
Definitely.
Now, fast forward to 1983.
Okay.
This is where the real drama unfolds.
Uh-oh.
Butler decides to leave sannyasa and marry Wailana, one of his disciples, who was already a mother of 3 young children.
Talk about a bombshell.
Yeah.
This decision contradicted everything sannyasa stood for.
Right.
It was a complete departure from the vows of renunciation he had taken, and it sent shockwaves through the community.
I can imagine.
People were confused, hurt, and disillusioned.
It's easy to see why. Here he was the leader of SIF, a figure who had embraced and embodied sannyasa, suddenly abandoning it all.
Yeah.
It definitely raised questions about his authority and the legitimacy of his teachings.
Absolutely. And this was further complicated by the fact that Butler had positioned himself as the sole guru within SIF,
Right.
the ultimate source of spiritual guidance.
Okay.
So his decision to leave sannyasa directly challenged this position of authority, creating a sense of uncertainty and distrust among some followers.
And this is where we start to see the cracks appear within SIF.
Yeah.
One of Butler's disciples, Krishna Karunya, expressed his desire to learn from other Gaudiya Vaishnava teachers,
Okay.
particularly a respected figure named Srilanari Maharaja. He even wrote a heartfelt letter to Butler outlining his need for deeper teachings and his yearning to connect with the broader Vaishnava community.
His letter is a powerful testament to the internal struggle many followers were experiencing.
Yeah.
Krishna Karunya thus felt that SIF's policy of Butler being the sole guru was incredibly restrictive.
He even went so far as to say that it fostered an us versus them mentality,
Right.
isolating SIF members from the wider Vaishnava community.
Yeah.
He clearly felt a deep yearning for a more inclusive and expansive spiritual experience.
And his story really highlights the tension at the heart of this deep dive.
Oh, wait.
On one hand, you have the traditional Gaudiya Vaishnava emphasis on seeking wisdom from multiple sources,
Right.
a lineage rich with diverse teachers and teachings.
Mhm.
On the other hand, you have Butler, who, after abandoning sannyasa, continued to assert his position as the sole guru within SIF, demanding absolute obedience and loyalty.
So we have Butler's controversial decision,
Yeah.
the ensuing confusion and disillusionment among some followers, and the emergence of voices like Krishna Karunya, seeking a broader spiritual path.
That's right.
What was SIF's response to all of this? How did they handle these challenges to Butler's authority? That's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into sannyasa and the Science of Identity Foundation.
As we were just talking about Chris Butler's decision to abandon sannyasa,
Right.
and SIF's response to the criticism that followed
Yeah.
really highlights the complexities of faith and leadership within this tradition.
It's a fascinating story, isn't it?
It is, and especially when you consider the personal experiences
Yeah.
of those who chose to leave SIF.
Right.
Their stories provide really valuable insights
They do.
into the inner workings of the organization
Yeah.
and the impact of Butler's decisions on those who dedicated their lives to his teachings.
Absolutely. Those personal accounts add a human dimension
Yeah.
to our understanding of this complex situation.
One story that stands out to me is that of Ian Koviak.
Oh, yes. Ian Koviak, he spent 4 years at a SIF Brahmachari school in Baguio, Philippines.
Now, for our listeners who might not be familiar with the term,
Right.
can you explain what a Brahmachari school is?
Of course. So, in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, a Brahmachari is a student who is committed to celibacy and spiritual study. Brahmachari schools are essentially residential programs where young men live and study under the guidance of senior devotees.
Okay, so it's meant to provide a really immersive environment
Right.
for spiritual growth and learning.
Exactly.
So what was Koviak's experience like at this school?
Well, according to his account, it was far from the idyllic spiritual haven one might expect.
Yes.
He describes a very regimented and austere lifestyle.
Oh, wow.
Waking up at 4 a.m. for meditation and during cold showers,
Oh, no.
with faulty wiring and being constantly reminded of their fallen nature compared to Butler and his inner circle.
That sounds pretty harsh,
It does.
especially for young men who are likely seeking
Yeah,
spiritual guidance and support.
and it gets even more unsettling.
What do you mean?
Koviak alleges that there was a serious incident involving Butler's stepson, Tapas Das,
Okay.
who had contracted a sexually transmitted infection
Wow.
and potentially exposed other students.
Hold on. The guru's stepson was engaging in risky behavior at a school dedicated to spiritual growth.
According to Koviak, that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
And instead of taking responsibility, Butler allegedly claimed that Tapas Das's actions were some kind of selfless sacrifice for him.
That's a pretty hard pill to swallow.
It is.
It sounds like a way to deflect blame and protect his stepson,
Right.
rather than addressing the issue.
And what's even more concerning is that, according to Koviak,
Yeah.
SIF leadership allegedly conducted late-night interrogations of the boys
Really?
to try and cover up the incident.
So it sounds like they were more concerned with protecting their image than ensuring the well-being of the students.
Exactly. This incident really raises questions about the power dynamics within SIF and how dissent or scandal was handled.
Yeah.
It seems like there was a culture of silence
Right.
and a fear of speaking out against those in authority.
There's a stark contrast to the ideals of openness
It is.
and honesty that are often associated with spiritual seeking.
It certainly is, and Koviak's story is not an isolated one. Other former members have come forward with similar accounts of abuse, manipulation, and control within SUF.
It's heartbreaking to hear these stories.
It is.
These individuals were seeking spiritual guidance and community,
Right.
and instead they encountered an environment that was often harmful and controlling.
It's a reminder that even within spiritual organizations, power can be abused.
Right.
And those in positions of authority can sometimes exploit the trust and devotion of their followers.
Speaking of power and control,
Okay.
let's shift gears a bit and talk about SIF's involvement in politics,
Okay.
particularly their support of the Gaur family in Hawaii.
Ah, yes, the political angle. This is where things get really interesting.
I know.
As we discussed earlier, Mike Gabbard, also known as Krishna Karthadas, was a devoted follower of Butler
Right.
and served as a state senator in Hawaii.
Uh-huh.
His wife, Carol, also a devotee, served on the Hawaiian Board of Education.
Okay.
And their daughter, Tulsi Gabbard, went on to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives.
And what's striking is that while these individuals received significant campaign contributions from SIF members,
Yes.
they often downplayed or even denied their allegiance to Butler and the organization.
It's a curious dynamic, isn't it?
It is.
On the one hand, they were benefiting from the financial and political support of SIF members.
Right.
But on the other hand, they were distancing themselves from the organization publicly.
It makes you wonder about their motivations.
It does.
Whether there were any unspoken agreements or understandings between them and SIF leadership.
Exactly. It raises questions about transparency and accountability.
Right.
Were they trying to shield themselves from potential controversy by downplaying their SIF connections?
Yeah.
Or was there a more calculated strategy at play?
And let's not forget about the financial aspect of SIF's operations.
Right.
There have been allegations of financial impropriety, particularly surrounding the use of businesses like Down to Earth, the health food store chain,
Okay.
and Wailana Yoga.
Yes. The money trail is always a fascinating, if sometimes convoluted, aspect of these stories.
Yeah.
It seems like SEF was involved in a complex web of businesses and financial dealings that went beyond their stated spiritual mission.
And then there's the connection to QNet,
Oh, yes.
a multi-level marketing company
Right.
with a rather shady reputation.
It's been suggested that Joseph Bismark, a longtime Butler devotee, played a role in both Down to Earth and QNet.
And QNet has faced accusations of operating pyramid schemes and misleading consumers.
Right.
The potential involvement of SIF in such activities raises some serious red flags
It does.
about their business practices and their potential exploitation of followers for financial gain.
It's a far cry from the image of a spiritual organization focused on self-realization and selfless service.
It certainly is. It seems like there was a blurring of lines between spiritual aspirations and worldly ambitions.
Yeah.
Between genuine devotion and the pursuit of wealth and power.
So we have this intricate web of spiritual teachings, questionable business practices, political maneuvering, and disturbing allegations of abuse and cover-ups.
It's a lot to process.
It is.
And it raises some fundamental questions
Yeah.
about the nature of faith leadership
Yeah.
and potential for exploitation within spiritual organizations.
Indeed. And as we delve further into this story, it's important to remember that these are just allegations.
Right.
And SIF maintains its innocence.
Okay.
However, the sheer volume of accusations from former members,
Yeah.
coupled with the documented evidence of their financial and political dealings, paints a concerning picture.
It's a picture that demands further scrutiny and exploration.
It does.
And in the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
we'll do just that. Examining the global reach of SIF, their controversial tactics for soliciting donations, and the intricate network of businesses that seem to serve both spiritual and, shall we say, more worldly interests. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite a journey uncovering the intricate and often troubling story of SIF's leader, Chris Butler, and the controversies that have surrounded them.
Yeah, it's certainly been a thought-provoking exploration delving into the complexities of faith power and the potential for exploitation within spiritual organizations. And in this final part, we're going to widen our lens and examine the global reach of SIF, their financial practices, and the intricate web of businesses that operate under their umbrella.
It's amazing how much ground SIF covered. They weren't just a local Hawaiian group. Their influence stretched far beyond those islands.
You're absolutely right. Remember those meditation centers we mentioned earlier, operating under various names like the Australian School of Meditation or the Czaitanii Mission? Those were all part of SIF's network, extending their reach across the globe.
It's like they were creating a spiritual empire, with branches sprouting up in Australia, the Philippines, Europe, and who knows where else.
And their recruitment tactics were quite interesting. Former members have described how SOF would offer free yoga classes or meditation workshops as a way to introduce people to Butler's teachings.
So it wasn't always clear up front that these seemingly secular activities were actually a gateway to SOF.
That seems to be the case. Some people might have joined a yoga class simply for the physical and mental benefits, only to find themselves gradually drawn into Butler's ideology and Saf's community.
That raises some ethical questions, doesn't it? It's one thing to openly promote a spiritual path, but quite another to subtly introduce people to a belief system without full transparency.
It certainly does. And then there's the issue of financial pressure within SAF. Some former members have alleged that they were expected to donate a significant portion of their income to the organization, sometimes even up to 50% or more of their earnings.
Wow, that's a huge ask, especially for individuals who are already dedicating their lives to the organization. It seems like it would create a strong sense of financial dependence.
Exactly. And this financial pressure, coupled with the isolation from outside influences that we discussed earlier, could make it very difficult for people to leave SEF, even if they had doubts or concerns.
It's almost like a gilded cage, isn't it? Providing a sense of community and purpose, but at a high cost. And let's not forget, those businesses we've been talking about, Down to Earth, Wailana Yoga, and the whispers of QNet involvement, they add another layer of complexity to this story.
On the surface, these ventures might appear to be legitimate businesses promoting healthy living and spiritual growth. But when you factor in the allegations of financial impropriety, the pressure on members to donate, and the potential links to a controversial multi-level marketing company like QNet, it starts to feel like something else entirely.
It's like a tangled web. Isn't it difficult to see where one strand ends and another begins? It makes you question what was genuinely serving a spiritual purpose and what was simply a means to generate wealth and power.
And that's the challenge with these kinds of deep dives, isn't it? Trying to piece together the truth from a mosaic of conflicting accounts, allegations, and hidden agendas.
Exactly, and while we can't definitively answer all the questions, we've certainly uncovered some thought-provoking insights into the inner workings of SIF and the controversies that have surrounded them.
We've explored the significance of sannyasa in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, the implications of Chris Butler's decision to abandon that path, and the impact it had on his followers. We've also delved into SIF's global reach, their financial practices, and the intricate web of businesses that operate under their umbrella.
And most importantly, we've heard the voices of former members whose personal experiences offer a glimpse into the human cost of these controversies.
Their stories remind us that even in the realm of spirituality, where we seek guidance, meaning, and connection, there's always a potential for abuse, manipulation, and the exploitation of trust.
It's a sobering reminder that we should always approach any organization or belief system with a critical eye, asking questions, seeking independent information, and trusting our own intuition.
And as you reflect on everything we've discussed today, we leave you with this. How do you navigate the complexities of faith and devotion in a world where power, money, and personal agendas can sometimes cloud the path to true spiritual fulfillment?
It's a question worth pondering.
No.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.